What up, heavy mommies? Welcome back. I'm back, dude. I'm back. Kind of. I'm back. But we'll explain. We'll explain. Because I've taken quite a bit of a break from everything. Taken quite a bit of a break from podcasting. I took quite a bit of a break from creating in general. I was active on the gaming channel, and I still am. I'm still playing my Mass Effect playthrough. In fact, I might play a little bit tomorrow. I have off of work tomorrow, but I wanted to record a podcast, man. I feel like, I want to do it when I want to do it, and today was a day that I was just feeling it. I do want to bring guests back on eventually, but I think for right now, I can't really manage that. I don't feel like coordinating with people and having to rely on other people's schedule and doing the remote thing. I also am no longer equipped to do the in-person podcast the way that I used to before. I used to do it on my phones, and I sold the extra phone. So I only have the one phone, and then I have this camera. But this camera can't record natively longer than 30 minutes. So that's an inherent limitation. It's easy for me to hook it up here in my little setup in my room. But it would be a lot more complicated for me to try to record a podcast in person and to do that. And I think, there will be a time where I'll probably bring that back in that form. But I think for now, I'm cool with just bringing the podcast back, doing it as kind of a solo thing. I will eventually bring guests back on again in the future, but I'm a little more interested in filmmaking right now. And so I think most of my collaborative stuff that I'm going to be doing is actually going to be short films. So we'll see. No promises on release dates or anything like that, because I'm still trying to work out what my process is. But I have all the equipment. I'm very excited to start working and using this equipment and to use it in the way that I would like. So it should be awesome. I'm shooting right now my Canon EOS R, which is one of my favorite toys. It's one of my favorite toys. I really love this thing. It's just all in all, it's just an awesome camera that's really allowed me to expand my creativity. So let's talk a little bit about why I was gone. I'll go ahead and just clean my glasses off real quick. But yeah, so my last podcast was in October, and believe it or not, I've actually tried to record a few of these since then, but they didn't pan out. They definitely didn't turn out in a way that I thought would be entertaining for you. They were mostly me just complaining and venting about my frustrations. And although it was cathartic for me, it probably wouldn't have been for you. So I'm glad that I scrapped those, and I'm glad that I didn't record one until now, And this is actually pretty spontaneous. I really wasn't planning on recording a podcast today. I kind of felt like it. So, yeah. So basically, to update you since October, COVID. COVID is a bitch, and I had many quarantines that I had to do. I had to quarantine away from my girlfriend for multiple weeks. She got COVID right before I was supposed to go back and visit my parents. I had to self-isolate and then confirm with another negative test before I could then leave and go visit them. I was able to eventually, but Mary couldn't come, so that was unfortunate. And yeah, so COVID had a huge effect on my creativity. It had a huge effect on my psyche, and it was traumatic. And the amount of times I came close to getting it was unfortunate, considering I wasn't going out and partying or doing anything. Literally, my exposure was my girlfriend and her family. That was pretty much entirely my exposure, was that her whole family got it at one point, and then she got it, but she got it from work. I don't know how. I think her dad got it from work and then spread it to everybody else in the family except her. And it was a whole thing, man. But luckily everybody's vaccinated now. Nobody died from that, and that's great. My grandma got COVID and she survived. She was in the hospital, but she somehow made it. My other grandma actually passed away during this time, not from COVID, but yeah, it was a tough time. I'm not gonna lie. It was this past year was awful, and even though there were certain things that were good, in the sense I upgraded my computer, I got this camera. There was a lot of things that were good that were going on, but they didn't make up for all the negative. They really didn't. They didn't make up for the shitty things. So that's where I feel like I've I've come a long way since then. I'm in a much better place now. I'm literally in a place where I'm able to do this podcast again. For a while, it was really questioning, like, why am I doing it? What's the point? And I kind of talk about that in my last podcast, if I remember correctly. I haven't heard it in a while, but I believe I was talking about how I need to do this stuff when I want to do it and do it because I want to. And I think that that's where the culmination of this this podcast right now is kind of a culmination of that, where, I'd almost kind of given up on the podcast. Like, not overall. Like, I kind of always knew that in the back of my mind I was going to keep this podcast as a thing, but I wasn't sure when I was going to do another one. This is kind of just me deciding, like, no, you know what? I feel like I got some stuff to say, so here it goes. I want to talk about creativity, man. I want to talk about finding ways to be creative and finding ways to be inspired, because that was something that I was struggling with this whole quarantine. I mean, I didn't feel inspired. I didn't feel creative. I didn't feel like I had a real ability to create with people. I didn't have that option. That was never a choice, because I didn't want to put Mary at risk. I didn't want to put her family at risk. I didn't want to put anybody I came in contact with at risk. I didn't want to put Joey at risk. There was just too many factors where I felt like it would have been irresponsible to be hanging out with people or to do anything creative with people. So I basically put my whole creative life on hold. And even though I didn't have to not be creative, like, I could have tried to do stuff by myself, I was not mentally in a state where I could. I really felt defeated. I felt defeated. I felt like lost. I felt like, what am I doing? Like, am I wasting my time with this podcast? Am I wasting my time with creating content? Like, no one watches any of this shit. Like, why am I doing any of it? And, I think you need to have those moments, because I think there is a valid question to be asked. Like, are you done? Is this really worth doing? Are you wasting your time? And for a while, I kind of was thinking, maybe I am wasting my time. Maybe I shouldn't believe in this dream. I don't believe that anymore, but that was definitely like, there was a point where I kind of stopped believing in myself as a creator, as an artist. I lost faith in myself. And I also lost faith in my own words. Like, I didn't believe myself anymore. I was like, oh yeah, you talk a big game, but like, what the fuck are you actually doing? And I think there's a lot of validity to that perspective when it's warranted. Like, if you really aren't doing the things you need to do, then when you have that feeling and you're kind of recognizing, like, I've been bullshitting myself for a little bit, I think that is healthy. But I think there is a delicate line where it's like, you're being healthy and you're calling yourself out and recognizing when, I'm not really giving this my best effort, versus, like, I'm just beating myself up unnecessarily. And I think for me it was a little bit of both. I think legitimately I had some genuine criticisms where it's like, okay, I'm not really working as hard as I could be on this stuff. But then on the other hand, I think I was being overly harsh on myself and not being more understanding that, we're in a fucking pandemic, dude. Like, you're not expected to be able to handle this perfectly. Like, this is an unprecedented moment in history for everyone that's alive. No one that's alive today has dealt with the pandemic of yesteryear, So this truly was something that we all collectively have suffered through it. And, so one of the things that kind of actually started to pull me out of this, funny enough, was J. Cole's album, dude. J. Cole's album was awesome. Like, I was not a big fan of KOD. Like, I like some songs on it, but I thought it was kind of like a mediocre album. I'm like, J. Cole can do better than this. I mean, what do I know? The dude's accomplished more in his life than I probably ever will. But that being said, it wasn't my favorite album. So when he came out with this one, and like, I genuinely like almost all of the songs. Like, there's only a couple skips for me on that album, and that's good. Very rarely do people make albums nowadays that I don't want to skip at least a couple songs. So very impressed. The theme of it is all about the off season. It's all about training. It's all about doing the drills and doing the things that make you better, that make you more skilled. And that was something that really resonated with me, because he made a documentary that accompanied it. And when I was watching that documentary, he talked about how there was a point in his career, and this is before he blew up. There was a point in his career where he had good music. I think this is like after he dropped the warm up, the mixtape. And in that, sorry about the sirens, dude, I'm always on a busy street. So anyway, I'm watching this thing, and he's talking about how, well, I was getting a little hot. I had some buzz bubbling. I had some contacts in the industry, and my friends had to come and like do an intervention with me because they were saying like, "Yo, what are you doing, man? Like you're just partying and having a good time, but you're not like really putting this shit into the music." And he took that to heart, and he started like really doing the drills, or maybe this was for the warm up. I can't remember exactly like where in his career he was at. I just know he was not famous at that point, but he was getting a little buzz going, and he was talking about how like you got to do the drills. He's like, why did I not make it in basketball? Well, it's because yeah, I was pretty talented and I played pretty well, but I wasn't drilling in the gym, a couple hours a day and doing all these things and doing the workouts. And so he kind of realized like, oh, I need to do those things. And so for a period of time, he did that. And then he started talking about where he is in his career now and how he is at a point where he could be comfortable. He could sit and rest on his laurels. The dude's made enough money to have him last a lifetime as long as he spends it wisely, which he strikes me as somebody who is pretty responsible with his money. And yeah, so he ended up talking about how, you know what, I thought about, have I made my best work? Have I dropped my best album? And he's like, nah, I don't think so. And so that's when he was like, all right, it's off-season time. It's time to drill. So he was doing drills. He was, writing songs in the studio all the time. It's a little bit harder for him now because he's got a kid and he's got, I don't know if he's married or if she's just like his significant other. I don't know, but he's he's with somebody, so he's got like obligations. He's got things outside of just the hustle that he's got to worry about. And there is some element where you got to be able to balance that shit, man. You can't just go into it and you can't just go into it and just like ignore your family, So, and I'm kind of I'm not at the same point of success in my career, obviously. I'm still starting up, dude. I'm the J. Cole before the warm up, but at the same time, I do now have more obligations. I have a girlfriend that I care about and that I want to make sure I give love and attention to, and I have time that I need to spend with other things. And then of course I have my full-time job, and then I do this stuff. I'm making content, whether it's playing games on Twitch, or if it's gonna be what I'm doing now in the future is making videos. And you'll see what's coming soon enough. Just be aware it is coming. There's some stuff. I got some interesting projects in mind, and they should be pretty easy, and I can record them myself. But so that, and then I've been really getting into photography. I've always enjoyed stills, but I was always video first, and I'm not convinced I'm not still video first, but lately I've been doing a lot of photography stuff, and I've been doing some portraiture. Luckily, my girlfriend Mary is always willing, I say always willing, mostly willing to be my model all the time. So I get to practice with her, take out my lenses, go out and shoot. We go to various trails and beautiful places, nice backdrops that I can practice and use my lenses and just up my skills. And so lately what I've been doing is drilling, with the camera and drilling with photography and composition and playing with lighting. And I'm trying to learn new stuff. I'm trying to play with new lenses. I'm trying to see, how can I improve my skill set? How can I get to the point where I'm so comfortable with this camera and I know exactly what settings I need to shoot in what situations that it's going to directly translate over to video. And then as I'm going to start getting back into video again, the stuff that I'm going to do with the video is going to help improve my ability with composition for shots, for B-roll, for A-roll, for directing, for coming up with a cohesive story, trying to tell a story, coming up with the narrative, all of those things. And so that's kind of where I'm at right now, where I don't really mind how it turns out. I don't mind if shit isn't perfect or whatever, but I definitely want to just make stuff, and hopefully you guys like it. Hopefully I can share something with the world, tell a story, because story's king, and that's the thing that's most important. I'm confident with this camera and these lenses that I have. Like, I'm confident that I can make the B-roll look interesting, So for me, it's like, how can I tell a story and make something compelling? And so what I loved about this podcast and what I loved about doing it with guests is that I was able to have these really interesting conversations and have these people share their points of view, their perspective, and for us to learn from that, right? Whether it's to learn something to do or not to do. Honestly, most of my guests have been great people, so you can't. I would say most of the stuff is you can learn what to do. But that being said, nobody's perfect, and we all make mistakes, and there's probably some stuff that we could learn to not do based on what people tell us. It's self-included, man. Don't listen to me completely, right? I'm just a very fallible human being that went through his own fucking identity crisis while doing this shit. Whether my voice was even important or worth sharing. And I'm hoping that it is. So I'm bringing this back for the sake of hoping that it is. But yeah, so basically the J. Cole album, it inspired me. I was going through some old photos on my phone, and I was looking at like all the different times in college that I was shooting videos, man. I was making music videos. I was hustling. I was doing the class. I was meeting people. And I thought about the same thing when I first moved to Chicago. I was hustling. I was networking. I was doing all these things that obviously COVID prevented me from doing for an entire year. But now, people are vaccinated. I'm vaccinated. The freedom of movement is here. The city is literally completely open now. So, with all these things kind of coming together, it all is coming together at the same time that I think my mental health has started to heal. I've started to heal from the trauma of this, and I've actually been going to therapy. And I've only gone a few times now, but I'm trying to make it a regular part of my schedule. It's something that's included in my health insurance, which I don't want to go down the rabbit hole of how fucked up insurance is as a concept and why we should have universal health care. That's a conversation for another podcast, but it's really great that I can do it and it doesn't cost me anything. It's literally zero out of pocket. It's telehealth. I get to do it from the comfort of my own home, and it's great. And therapy so far has been really good. I don't think I've gone in anything super deep yet, but I'm working on it. But yeah, so I think for me, my creativity's coming back. The more I'm doing creative things, the more creative I feel, the more ideas I have, and that's the way it is, man. The resistance is sitting down and doing the thing, but once you start doing it, your ideas just flow out of you. It's just what it is. It's something that is always obvious, and I'm always reminded of it every time that I do it, and yet it's still always very hard for me to sit down and do whatever I need to do. But yeah, so I wanted to make sure that I did a podcast, and I wanted to make sure that I talked a little bit about my absence, because obviously it's been a while. I wish I could promise you and say I'm going to release more podcasts more regularly again. And the answer to that is maybe I will, honestly, but I don't want to force it. So I only want to do it when I feel like doing it. Especially because right now my heart is more in filmmaking, and I think I can tell much more compelling stories through a lens and through a camera. So I think you guys should be on the lookout for that stuff, and I think it'll be exciting for you. I plan on fusing a lot of elements of my podcast, like my guest podcast, so not the solo stuff, although I might do some stuff with some concepts that I would cover on a solo one. But I want to do some stuff with some of the people that I have actually had on as guests, and maybe have them tell their story in a different way rather than just a podcast. So, I'll still take some elements from my interview skills / conversation stuff, and maybe I can even take some clips from the podcast and kind of throw it into these films. But I want these films to kind of speak for themselves, and I want them to be their own cohesive thing. Try to keep them around 10 minutes or so that it's long enough to tell the story but short enough to be really easy to consume. And over time, as I make these, I want to find my signature style. But one of the things that I always struggled with is perfectionism, and I always have obsessed over making sure that everything's perfect and it's got to do this and that, and then I end up not doing stuff because I don't think it'll be good enough, or I start thinking about how much it's going to take for me to accomplish this thing, and that's literally not healthy. I mean, it's super unhealthy to do shit like that. And so I have to get out of my own way, and the only way I can get out of my own way is to kind of just do things and not think about it too much, because if I think about it too much, I'm going to overthink it. I'm going to overanalyze. I'm going to add too much pressure. It's a cycle that I'm consistently in when it comes to my creativity. It probably permeates in other aspects of my life too, but that is something that I really want to focus on, and just do shit, just make stuff. So, if I overthought doing this podcast, I probably wouldn't have recorded it, to be honest. I literally did this on a whim, and I just kind of quickly just made sure that my settings were good. I wanted to make sure that everything recorded properly when I did this, but ultimately this was really spur of the moment. But I feel like I feel like I've owed you guys some podcasts. You guys have missed out on my perspective for a while, and during a time of such like craziness, being the pandemic, I do feel like my voice could have been more helpful to you. And I feel like I let you all down as an audience a little bit. And I let myself down. But I also know that I had to go through what I had to go through in order to get to the point that I'm at now. So I'm older, I'm wiser, 27 now, which is crazy. And I feel like I'm ready to be back. I feel like I'm ready to really provide value and hopefully provide some entertainment too. I want this shit to be fun, man. Like, yeah, let's talk about some deep stuff. Let's talk about philosophy, but we can also just kick it and do some heavy mommy shit. There's nothing wrong with that, And I think that's where the gaming channel kind of comes in. It's like my little outlet where I can be a little more goofy. I can do my voices and stuff. And just have some fun gaming. So definitely be sure to check me out on Twitch. I have all the links and all the descriptions of everything all the time. Although I probably need to update some of the links, but that's its own fucking challenge. But yeah, so it's been good. It's been good. I mean, it was bad, but it's good now. And I've been hustling. I've been out there. I've been shooting like every week, where I've been going out and taking pictures. I shot some portraiture with a friend of mine who I used to work with, and I got some really good shots. I'm really proud of them, actually. I think I played really well with the natural lighting at the time. I got some good framing. I've been really loving. I could literally spend a whole podcast talking about my cameras, but I know that's why you guys are not following me for that. Maybe I'm gonna probably do some YouTube videos where I talk about and nerd out over the technology and the gear and stuff. But I've been having a lot of fun with these different lenses. I've been playing with different focal lengths and finding out what they're useful for. So right now I'm shooting on a 15 to 35 millimeter, very expensive piece of glass. It's literally my most expensive piece of glass that I own, but it's also now it's like my filmmaker like main lens now. This is the lens I'm going to shoot my podcast on, like I am right now. But then this is also a lens that I'm going to do a lot of film stuff with, because with my camera, there is a 1.6 or 1.8 crop factor when I use 4K. So if I want that higher resolution, it literally will crop into the frame and I'm not using the full sensor. So when I do that, having a wide angle lens like the 15 to 35 allows me to achieve a 35 millimeter within that 4K 1.6 crop or 1.8. I can't remember the number. But basically I can just zoom it out a little bit more and then it effectively becomes a 35 millimeter. If you do the math, you can kind of figure out what that is. But it's been cool. So having that as an option, and then having this 70 to 200 as my newest lens, and this thing just takes the most beautiful portraits. I mean, what it does is not only does it blur out and just obliterate the background like fucking Exodia, but it also compresses the background and brings things closer. So if I'm taking a picture of somebody and they're in front of, for example, the Chicago skyline, it will literally bring the skyline and the buildings closer and make it seem like they're right up on the city and that they're just right outside of those buildings. And obviously you could tell it's in the distance, but it seems like they're closer than they are. And I love that effect. It's so nice. You just zoom it all the way into 200 and it just looks chef's kiss, But I'm having a lot of fun. I feel like I've learned a lot from this, and I feel like there's a lot that I can continue to do in this space. And I think as you see me work more in the film world, I think you'll see that is even more in line with my spirit and my soul than even the podcast. Although talking is one of my fucking talents, man. I talk forever. I could literally talk forever about anything. But I just feel like film is going to allow me to edit it down to the most essential parts. Because sometimes if you listen to this podcast, it's me rambling, bro. I don't edit this shit. This is just me going off of a train of thought. And I'm pretty good at trying to stay on track with my general train of thought. But sometimes I'm going to lose it. So to be able to have something where I can literally edit it and really tell the story in as few words as possible, but to leave the most impact, it's such a fun and unique challenge for me in a way that like editing this podcast, no offense, is just like not that satisfying. It's very simple. It's really easy to edit. I just throw on, you know, music at the beginning and I throw on music at the end and I have like a little title graphic and then that's kind of it. So knowing that and knowing that, knowing that it's not as fulfilling on that aspect of it. Like the act of recording the podcast is fulfilling and it's cathartic for me to talk to the camera, but it's editing it later kind of sucks. So to be able to make a film where editing it is like also part of the fun, because that's what helps bring the crafting of the narrative together. That's how you tell the cohesive story. That's how you make sure that certain emotional beats hit. And that's how, you can kind of direct people's emotions through the B-roll, through the music. It's a combination of all of my talents and all the things that I went to school for combined. And it's something that I've always wanted to do. And one of the main reasons why I always told myself that I couldn't do it is because, well, film's a lot easier with other people. Let's be honest. It's a lot easier to have a team. And I don't have a team. It's literally just me. And I think that's why it's been so hard for me to stay consistent and keep doing things. Because it's like, well, I'm living my life. I got a 40-hour work week. And I have a girlfriend who I spend, my best time with her is on the weekend, which is also probably my best time to be able to create stuff in terms of I'm the most free. I'm not limited to just after I've gotten off of work. And so it's hard to juggle those things and also live a balanced life. At the end of the day, creating content isn't everything, and having a life and having relationships with people you care about and friendships and spending time and going out and doing things, that's just as important as making content. Making content is creative and it's artistic expression for me, and it's something that definitely fulfills me, but it alone cannot fulfill me. That's where I need the things like my girlfriend and my friends and to be able to have those other ways of blowing off steam. And so I think what you'll see in this next evolution or iteration of myself is going to be a continuation of that creative expression, just maybe not in the same way that it has been before. But I promise you that this shit's going to be better. I really do think it is. I think, I don't want to hype up my first video because it's probably not going to be nearly as good as my 20th, But the idea is that I just want to start doing stuff. And as I do them, I'll figure out better ways to do it. I'm going to nail it over time, and I'll really figure out my style and my voice. But that's not something I got to figure out on video one. So bear with me. Let me make some mistakes. Let me make some of this shit and it not work out. It's not a big deal. And I think you guys will really enjoy it. But who knows? Maybe I am going to continue doing this podcast, more frequently again. But I don't want to make that promise because I really don't know. It kind of depends on where my heart is. And right now my heart is a little more in film than it is in doing this podcast. But if I continue to find reasons to say something and to be able to talk to the camera, then I definitely will. And moving forward on this podcast, I think for the moment, probably no guests. It's probably just going to be me. So if you guys really preferred the guest episodes, I'm sorry. But I plan on bringing back aspects of that in these films instead. So hopefully those films, although not as long as a podcast, hopefully they'll be just as useful to you or just as inspiring, because that's really what I'm trying to do. I want to inspire people while also inspiring myself. I want to hype you guys up, but also hype myself up. As much as this stuff is intended to help other people, it's also intended to help me. And I'm going to just be honest with you. That's part of it. Part of it is this helps me. This gives me catharsis. This allows me to express myself creatively. And knowing it helps other people too is like such a great bonus. But I kind of got to do this shit for me, man. And I think the same thing applies to you all, is you got to do that shit for you. You got to do the things because you want to do it. And you can't be worrying about other people. You can't be worrying about perfectionism. You got to just hustle and do your own thing. So yeah, so I think we're about at like 30 minutes here. So I'm probably going to end the podcast here. Thank you for tuning in. I really appreciate you all. I'm glad I could come back, even if it's just for a brief moment in time. Follow me on YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, all that shit. I got all the links everywhere. I appreciate you all, and peace out, heavy mommies.